Not like us dumbasses.
Just a longer presentation for each of you.
Oh, hell, I haven't prepared anything longer.
Whip him into shape.
We could always add some Nitrous 9. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we could always. Well, we'll put you in last so that that gets the people out of the room.
Yeah. I mean, we could do a segment on Nitrous 9, but we wouldn't have much to talk about.
Well, you'd be waxing poetic about the trash can design.
Hey, yeah, we didn't mention that before. Well, there's half an hour.
By the way, you're live now on Twitch, so I can see the living the dream as a CoCo game developer.
Oh, cool. Okay. All right, so we're going to say good
something serious and non-sarcastic. That took me a second to adjust to. All right, so Nick, you have to unshare for me to share. Is that how that works?
Yeah, so I'll do a stop share when I'm finished. Do you want to set up something? I can stop share now.
No, actually, I don't need to until you're ready. So all right. I just wanted to make sure that's how it worked.
Yeah, when I finish, I stop share, and then you can take over.
And just so you guys know, you guys are streaming audio and video at the moment. So
yeah, at the moment, everything's live.
I will mute now.
Also, can we have Randy Weaver's laptop camera pointed at the audience again?
Yeah, that's right.
Because we can't see. We can see
the
head of somebody.
Ceiling lights.
You can see some people's heads in the front row. Hey, that's great. That's great. Hello.
People are rolling in.
Wow. Gee, maybe I don't want to see how many people are in there.
There's going to be a lot of disappointed people.
I'm already used to that from our presentation, so.
Hey, if you guys can hear us, just give us a wave. Oh, they can't hear us.
They can hear us in the back.
Yeah, one person in the back can hear you. The rest are ignoring you completely.
Right.
Yeah.
The person in the back thought that they could escape by sitting back there, but guess not.
Good plan. So there aren't any speakers at the front, or what won't be, rather?
Yeah. All right, guys, go ahead and get started just because in the interest of starting of time.
Sure.
It's 3 minutes to go, is it? Well, okay, I'll wait 2 minutes just in case there's more people that come in. Might as well go for maximum embarrassment.
Yeah, we're bringing food in to lure the people here.
Now that's thinking.
That's right. Burritos for everyone.
Why the hell didn't you do that for ours?
Yeah, but the thing is, they got to listen to me, so the food is a distraction.
Is there any Vegemite out there?
Well, that's at the food. That's at the end of the show when we want people to leave.
All right, lights have been dimmed. Take it away.
Okay, should I start? Let's go. Good day, everyone. My name's Nick Marentes, and I'm going to be reading most of this because I'm not very good for live talk. So here I go. This presentation is called Living the Dream as a CoCo game developer. And in this seminar, there will be 3 speakers, each describing an aspect of their work or experience as a CoCo game developer. Now, before I go any further, did everyone hear that? Is the microphones working and the speakers? It doesn't look like it is.
Yep. People gave
us thumbs up. Thumbs up. So that worked. So we're good to go. Okay, as the first speaker, I will be talking about how I became a CoCo game developer, my motivations, my inspirations, and my goals. The estimated time for my segment will be around 20 minutes. Okay, so here I go. First slide. Around the late 70s, when I was a young high school student at the age of 14, I received a science fair 40-in-1 electromagnetic experiment kit sold by Tandy Radio Shack. As my interest grew in electronics, I also got the 75-in-1 electronics project kit. These kits were amazing, and I spent many hours building and learning from each of the projects. These kits were the catalyst for my interest in electronics and computers. I became a regular visitor to the local Tandy Radio Shack electronics store, mesmerized by the electronic parts, hi-fi equipment, electronic gadgets, and electronic toys. The store had become a place of worship for me, a nerd's church inside the local shopping mall. A product that piqued my interest in the store was the TRS-80 computer on display, a 4K RAM level 1 basic system, which the store manager let me play on after school every day. I would write programs on paper, at home, or during class at school, and typing them in when I got to the Tandy Radio Shack store. I'll explain my bad chemistry results. I became very proficient at programming in BASIC, and it wasn't long before I was finding many limitations with level 1 BASIC and the 4K of RAM. This forced me into the heavy use of multi-statement lines and developing techniques to make my programs do more and to run faster. One problem in particular was when I was wanting to create a visual effect that would rapidly paint the entire screen to white in order to create a flashing effect. But BASIC was too slow using the set command, and I eventually worked out that I could print 256-byte strings onto the screen, which I did in 1 second versus 45 seconds for the set command. A big improvement that made me feel like a superhero. I was the man. Video games in the arcades were becoming a booming industry, and my intent was to create games that rivaled the arcades. I was fascinated by the graphics, sound effects, and animation of these arcade machines. But unfortunately, I couldn't create anything on the TRS-80 that matched the speed and feel of the games in the arcades. I concluded that the arcade machines just ran more powerful and faster processors. I had heard of machine language, but I didn't understand exactly what that was. I'd seen a few games released for the TRS-80 that did exhibit some of these arcade qualities, but I didn't understand the sorcery that created them and assumed that this was something inaccessible to the average programmer. Then one day, this other computer kid came into the store and loaded a program called T-Bug into the store's computer. He proceeded to type all these cryptic numbers into the computer. I didn't understand what it all meant, but I skeptically watched on. When he had filled the screen, he then proceeded to execute this code. The moment he pressed the enter key, the screen was painted white instantly, and my jaw hit the floor. I was dumbfounded, and I realized that I had just witnessed a revelation. From that day, I devoted myself to learning the dark art of machine language and began planning my ascension to greatness. Evil laugh here. But the first step was that I needed my very own computer. On the Christmas of 1980, I acquired my very own 16K Level 2 Basic TRS-80 Model 1. Why didn't I get a CoCo instead, which had just come out as a new computer? Well, because we only had a single black and white TV in the family lounge. But the TRS-80 was a complete bundle with its own green screen monitor and a cassette player. It looked better with its sharp 64-column display as opposed to the not so sharp and toyish 32-column display on the CoCo. So I chose the TRS-80 Model 1. I now had my weapon of mass destruction, and I was ready to unleash its power. In hindsight, I'll just stop here. In hindsight, I should have bought a CoCo because that would have been the best time to start programming on the CoCo, wouldn't it? But I didn't know much about the CoCo. Anyway, getting back. I was introduced to some of the great arcade games being released for the TRS-80. In particular, from a company called Big Five Software. Their programs seemed to exhibit a certain polish that made them very arcade quality. I was very impressed and highly motivated to create games that matched this work. In the years that followed, I created 6 complete commercial grade games for the TRS-80 Model 1. 2 were in BASIC with machine language subroutines, and 4 were full machine language programs. I tried selling them with the dream of becoming a game software developer like Big Five. I designed and created the packaging, recorded the cassettes, and created advertising flyers, which I gave out. I sold probably about 30 games in total, which wasn't too bad for a high school kid with a big dream and almost no budget. But by 1984, I was still $1 million short of being a millionaire, and the TRS-80 Model 1 was showing its age. Low-res monochrome graphics just didn't cut it anymore, and I knew I had to upgrade to one of the new high-resolution color systems on the market. And one moment while I get to the correct page. I looked at the very popular Commodore 64, the Sega SC3000, and the Spectra Video MSX range. All had 16 colors, hardware sprites, and a sound chip. A big upgrade from the TRS-80's low-resolution monochrome graphics, and in the area of graphics and sound, they were better than the Tandy's color computer solution. But in the end, I fell back to familiar territory and got a Tandy color computer with dual floppy drives. Less color, no sprites, and no sound chip. It didn't look promising as a system to lay my dreams as a game developer, but as a computer, I knew it had a far superior BASIC, and the CPU was touted as being better, although at the time, I didn't know why, since my only experience was with the Z80 and the TRS-80. What enticed me the most was the fact that there were 750 Tandy Radio Shack electronic stores across Australia and thousands more in the US. This, I felt, was the biggest advantage for me as a game developer. I was hungry to exploit that large distribution pipeline and had a dream to make my games sell in every Tandy store across Australia. With the CoCo, I had to learn 6809 assembly language. So I purchased the Tandy EdTASM ROM pack, which was very similar to the Tandy editor assembler on the TRS-80. I didn't want to use tape or load and save my files, as I had done all with all my work on the TRS-80, and used a patched version of the EdTASM found in Rainbow magazine, which allowed disk loads and saves. I created Neutroid 2 in late '84 and placed a half-page ad for it in an Australian CoCo magazine, but I made no sales. I tried to promote Donut Dilemma to various distributors and was disappointed. Donut Dilemma ended up being illegally distributed to and then sold by Tom Mix in the US, until I wrote them a letter explaining it was illegal. Neither program sold well enough, and the CoCo was looking dated compared to other computers. I sent Tandy Australia a copy of Donut Dilemma as a last-ditch effort, but I wasn't expecting any reply. By 1986, the CoCo was a 6-year-old system, and I wanted something newer and with better graphic and audio capabilities. I was beginning to lose enthusiasm with the CoCo, and I started looking around and considering a computer divorce. Then in 1986, Tandy announced the CoCo 3, and I was excited by what I had read. It became available in stores here in Australia around September of 1986, and I purchased one. The improvements were considerable and were just what I'd been wanting, which gave me a renewed enthusiasm. It was also at this time that Tandy Australia was interested in selling my Donut Dilemma, and they wanted to bundle it with a special Christmas CoCo 3 package planned for 1987, and asked if I could enhance it to use the CoCo 3's extra colours and sound. By 1988, I had also created Rupert Rhythms and Space Intruders, and Tandy sold all of them in their stores. Things were finally starting to look up for me, and I was finally living the dream as a CoCo game developer. Now, at this point, I'll fast track my history lesson so as to stay in the allotted time. Soon after, I got a job as a salesman in the local Tandy store. This was great because I also got to sell CoCo 3s. Then in 1992, Tandy discontinued the CoCo 3, which left me very disappointed. By this time, it seemed to me that Tandy were changing from being the company I enjoyed so much. So I left Tandy. I also left the CoCo world for a time. Until 1987, 97, I mean, when I saw the work done by John Kowalski, better known as the Sock Master. His CoCo 3 demos got me fired up, and I was encouraged to set up my CoCo 3 again. I was ready to relive the dream as a CoCo games developer, albeit with much lower expectations, and I continued to develop games for the CoCo, which I am still doing today. To finish up, I will pass on a few words of wisdom for anyone thinking of becoming a CoCo games developer. Tip number 1, when it comes up. Tip number 1 is don't give up your day job. The CoCo's golden era, where one could make good money writing and selling games, ended in the 80s. Anything you create should be done for the fun of doing it on the CoCo. It's a hobby nowadays, not a career. Any money you make is only pocket money and is used to provide the incentive to continue providing the CoCo community with new products. Tip number 2. Creating a complete game takes discipline, focus, organization, and patience. Don't try bite off more than you can chew, and keep your expectations low. You'll learn more doing something simple and achievable. Break down a big project into smaller modules, else you'll just burn yourself out. Tip number 3, use tools that you are comfortable with. I still develop on a real CoCo and use an enhanced version of the original editor assembler, or EdTASM, that I started with back in 1984. People think I'm crazy, but I'm comfortable with that. Note, I didn't say that I wasn't crazy. Others prefer the modern and faster tools offered by modern computers. Whatever works for you. And lastly, tip number 4, red is a good color for a Ferrari, and I have 3 of them. And that's my presentation. So hopefully that gives you a bit of insight into the insane mind of a CoCo game developer. And I'll now pass the baton on to, oh, someone's already disconnected me. Pass the baton on to Paul Thayer, I think is next.
I am. I'm not sure if there was any questions for Nick.
Well, do we have time for it? Maybe we can have them
Probably
at the end. Yeah, I figured we'd leave the questions at the end in case we're running over time.
Sure. So, hello, everybody. I'm Paul Thayer, also known as Redbeard on Discord. I have a CoCo game development story too. I'm going to focus a little bit more on modern day tools that I've been using to help me make games, what they are, where you can get them if available, and what I use them for. It's going to be really brief. I'm not going to get into a lot of details on how to do any of that. So we'll go ahead and get started. I do want to talk a little bit about my history. So, 86, 87, can't really remember. That was a long time ago for me. I was 5 or 6 years old. My brother Tim actually is the one who got the computer. But I soon took over because, we always share our toys. But we had Rainbow Magazine subscriptions. I did a lot of type-in programs from BASIC. And we really wanted to try and we were always really excited about video games, always loved them, Nintendo and stuff like that. We always really wanted to make that quality of games. And we kind of thought that we could, using BASIC on the CoCo 3. But, you do a lot of HDraw, HPrint, HScreen. You take up a lot of your programming space just trying to get your graphics or whatever else set up and the CoCo 3. And BASIC was just too slow. And we'd get into these projects and be, moving along on them, and then we'd run out of memory. And then I went into, high school and started seeing girls and learned how to play guitar, and I went to school for doing graphics arts, and I kind of left the CoCo behind, and I started doing some other things in my life. Then around like 2008, 2009, I'm like, man, I used to love doing programming on the Color Computer 3. I used to love some of these old games. And so I knew that there was emulators out for like the PlayStation 1 and the Nintendo 64, some of the other consoles that I had started using. So I started looking for CoCo 3 emulators, and I found them. The one at the time was a DOS-based one. Curtis always remembers the guy's name. I can't ever remember his name.
Jeff Avasor.
Thank you. Used that one for a really long time. And then, found VCC and MAME. Additionally, later on, I also remember there being a website. I think it was CoCo3.com. There was a lot of stuff there, a lot of information because it was a big forum. And I had been using a PC-based program called Game Maker. It was originally written by a guy named Mark Overmars from Denmark. It's a really great program. Like if you're interested in making games at all that are two-dimensional, it's a really good place to start. Teaches a lot of good fundamentals about making games, and is really easy to use. So at that time, I started to learn a little bit more about the CoCo 3's hardware because I noticed that people in Rainbow magazines were able to have another H get H put buffer. Well, how do they do that? And now that I'm an adult and not 8, 9 years old anymore, it was easier for me to comprehend things like they would use another unused 8K page by using some L pokes or whatever else to set them up as an additional buffer to put their graphics into. And I created a sprite editor and a full graphics editor for me to make basic games. Yep, and I started poking around to try and speed things up in basic. So learning some things about machine language and assembly and more about like the super extended color basic ROM and what some of its commands and trying to alter some of that. But I was really escalating like the need for assembly and the need for a good set of tools to be able to make the games that I wanted to make. And then out of nowhere comes this crazy dude from Denmark around 2014, 2015. And he's like, I will teach you assembly. And that day we started a really good friendship. And I had a really ambitious game I wanted to make, I guess, with Timberman. And we used my basic sprite editor to create all the sprites. I used CoCo Max 3 to make the background that's in the game. We use just Windows Notepad to type all of the assembly code into. And we use William Astel's program LWASM, the Lost Wizard Assembler, and the DOS prompt. We also use WImage Tool, which is available from MAME, the VCC emulator, and real hardware with an SDC. So that we could, if things were working on the emulator, we want to make sure they're working on the real CoCo 3. Always a good rule of thumb. So this is really where my assembly journey really started. And now, after the history is done, I kind of wanted to talk about, a lot of the tools that I use and where you can get them in case you're, wanting to get started in this kind of same journey. A lot of what, Nick said already, it takes a lot of planning, takes a lot of organization, patience, and you want to set milestones for yourself to achieve in programming. And you want to make sure it's achievable, right? So if you only have 2 hours a day or maybe 2 hours a week, what am I going to do in those 2 hours and what do I want to accomplish? It's always great to have a support group. So get to, networking with people in the community to help you solve problems, maybe take a look at your code, maybe give you a little bit of advice. Also make tools for you, as I will get into here in just a little bit. And I'll talk more about my support group at the end. So there's a lot of tools here, the books, the docs, the editors, notebooks, physical, actual notebooks, emulators, real hardware, and jams is super important, at least for me. So the first tool is the assembly books, right? So you got TRS-80 Color Computer Assembly Language Programming by William Barton Jr. Great book. I use it every time I program assembly. It's always right to the left, and I index it quite often. Another one is by Darren Atkinson, the 6809 and Hitachi 6309 Programmer's Reference. That goes into a lot of detail on the specific opcodes and how long they take and a lot of other things. It's very good. That's available on the archive. The TRS-80 Color Computer Assembly Language Programming book is hard to get now. I did find some on eBay earlier, but there was only like 2 of them available. So you're going to need that if you're going to do any kind of assembly programming. Hardware docs are important because you need to understand the hardware that you're programming on. The interface and the input from the user is going to come through some pieces of hardware. You need to know where they are, how to address them, and how to program them. And there's a lot of documents out there. It depends on what you're looking for. A lot of things can be found on the archive. The 2 that I use the most is Color Computer 1, 2, and 3 hardware programming that was done by Chris Lamont. and it's up on his site, lamont.org, under computing and software. It is an unfinished document with some flaws and things like that. But it is a really great place to start. And I used it to start developing my keyboard and joystick routines that I have in my library today. I have had to update those quite often because, as I said before, his document is a little bit unfinished, so it doesn't go into a lot of things that you will learn along the way, let's say by trial and error, right? And then Sockmaster's gimme reference is super important for any kind of CoCo 3 programming. So it tells you every address that you need to know for, addressing the gimme and the MMU and what each bit does and how it works. It's super important for setting up graphic screens using horizontal scrolling, vertical scrolling, all of that stuff. Super important. A great graphics editor, one that you're comfortable with, is really good to have. There's many of them out there. You're going to want something that allows you to have indexed color palettes so that you can match the color computer palette that you're working with. I use GIMP. It's available for free. It has tons of plugins that I'm actually learning new things about as we speak. Really easy to use, and it's cross-platform, so you can use it on any computer system that you have. A sprite compiler is important. I'll tell you, I've spent many hours, probably days, hand typing in assembly code to compile a sprite. So a compiled sprite is basically, a lot of times, you're going to take a graphic image that's on a buffer in memory, and then you're going to copy those bytes onto your screen. And you're probably going to use some masking so that you can have transparency. Well, what a compiled sprite is actual assembly language programming that plots each individual byte onto the screen for you. It's a lot faster, but it takes up more RAM. Some famous sprite compilers out there were one from Glenn Hewlett. Nick Marentes just developed one for his 0 Hour project that was using the Color Computer Basic. Paul Fiscarelli actually worked with myself and Simon Jonason, and he developed a CoCo sprite compiler for the PC that he's actually probably going to talk more about later. But that's the one that I use in development. It spits out the assembly code I need, and it does it way faster and better than I can do. And it's got a lot of advanced features in it. I'm going to just show you a quick screenshot. You open up your bitmap there, the yellow guy. It gives you byte data on the right. And then the assembly code that actually gets generated is also on the lower right. And as you can see, it matches my color palette for the color computer as well, down on the lower left. A hexadecimal editor is really good. You're going to need to use that for editing any binary files. So a lot of times what we do now is we'll use full screen images that we developed on the GIMP, and we need to convert those to work on the color computers. So a hex editor is super important for that because you can strip the header of the bitmap file so you can get down to the raw binary data. And then you can add preambles and postambles that the color computer disk system uses to recognize files on the directory to load them in. There's a lot of other applications you can do that with, but that's primarily what I use it for. And I use the HXD, and that is available at the website here. I also should note, I'm going to need to post this. I want to post these PowerPoint presentations somewhere where you guys can use it. I don't know if I'll do that on Discord, probably Facebook, something like that. I'll talk to Jim Brain, see if we can get a distribution train for anybody who wants it. Another thing that I use a lot is a spreadsheet. You can calculate your tables. I use it to make visual management of my memory maps and so much more. And I use Excel, but I would imagine OpenOffice or Google Sheets would work just as well. So here's an example of something that I've used the spreadsheet for. So this is my game I'm working on right now, CoCo Ban. It's a memory map. So how am I using each addressable space? What modules are where, what page are they on? And it just kind of helps me organize it. So as I'm writing, several modules throughout the course of several months, I have this there to reference for myself so that I don't get lost. I brought my pencil So one of the biggest things that I use is very primitive. It is just a notebook. A lot of times I will buy a notebook specifically for the project that I'm working on. I will jot down any kind of notes, any kind of plans, goals, milestones. It's very useful for if you have to take a 2-month break from programming and you come back and say, where the hell was I and what did I leave off on? That's one thing that can help you, as well as the comments in your code will definitely help you too. I use index cards a lot too. So anything that you're comfortable with for making notes and keeping track of things manually, I highly recommend that as well.
Hey, Paul, can you hear me?
I can, Steve.
Paul, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. Can you hear me?
Steve, can you hear us?
Paul,
Steve,
can you hear me, Paul?
I can. Curtis, can you hear me?
We lost power to the laptop that was coming up on the projector, so I need you guys to hold on a second, okay?
Okay.
I can't hear you on my headset now.
Curtis,
because that was
can
coming
you
back
hear
through
me,
your
Curtis?
laptop.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah, you're coming through
Okay,
fine.
yeah, we can't hear you guys, and you're not up on the screen right now. So just bear with us. One of the last things that we heard before the laptop died was you talking about I brought my pencil and your notepad. All right, Paul?
Got it.
So hold that thought. Once we get the audio back up and running, I'll ask you to start over from there.
Give me something to write on, man.
Hot for Teacher. That's a good song.
I don't know why I can't hear it in my Bluetooth headset when I'm on the same Zoom call as you guys.
Yeah, that is really weird. I think I'm just going to skip right up to the text editor. I'm almost done.
Yeah.
All right,
You've got
just give us a second.
9 minutes.
I'm not going to be long at all, guys, so take as much time as you need, Paulie.
Oh, you know what? My Bluetooth, the headset died. That's why I wasn't hearing you guys on my Bluetooth.
We got things dying out all over the place here.
Yeah.
We'll have time at the end for a QA just to finish off.
Well, it sounds like we're coming back through the PA.
Yeah, I can see your slide on the screen now too.
Awesome.
So we're good to go?
Go ahead.
Awesome. Great. So the last thing I talked about was just having a notebook, some sort of manual pen and paper thing for you to make notes on and keep track of for the overall project. Text editor is super important. That's what you're going to type your assembly code in. Whatever you're comfortable with is good. I highly recommend making the move to Notepad++. It's changed my life as a developer. It makes things so much faster. It's free. It's available at the link I set up here. It's got a lot of advanced editing features. I can launch my program right out of it. There is some setup work that has to be done to do that. There's people out there that can help you do that, but it's really great, and I love it a lot. There's a screenshot of it right here, so you can have multiple modules open. So you have your main program and then your modules that you're working on next to it. You can set up colors for syntax so that you can kind of visually manage what you're doing in your code. It's really great. Of course, you're going to want an assembler. So there's quite a few available. You can get Npasm Plus, a true classic text editor and assembler in one. It is specific to the CoCo, I believe. And it is available on the archive. And I know one person in this group that has made several video games using that. Also, there's LWASM, which is the one that I use that was written by William Assel. It's a PC-based assembler. The nice thing is it assembles 6309 and 6809. It's got a cool advanced features on it as well. One of the things that I use often is cycle counting. There's certain codes that you can put in that will tell you the amount of time that your routines are taking. It's very vital for when you're trying to make games that are fast. That is available at the link here as well, and with additional tools that William Assel has graciously made. A compressor and a decompressor isn't too important, but I use it a lot because I like to have a single binary for you to load as opposed to a bunch of different binaries that get loaded in by like a booting program. And one of the reasons that I do that is kind of selfish. In order for me to launch my project right away from, my text editor, it's nice to have everything contained. I don't have to set up a disk to have all these files on it that need to be loaded. But it's used for taking large amount of data that could, possibly jeopardize how much memory you have for your program, and compresses that down. The one that I use is called dzip. It was made by our friend Kieran of XRoar fame. And it is available at the link provided here. And the decompressor, I believe, is there as well. Like I said, there's plenty of people in the community who can reach out and help with the compressor and decompressor. There's more than one available as well. Another great tool is an emulator. So the CoCo 3 ones, which is what I developed for, you got MAME, MES, VCC, XRoar. They're all great, and they all have specific uses to me as a developer. So MAME was the most accurate for a long time. I'm not sure where it kind of ranks on that whole scale anymore. It's free. It's got an excellent debugger. It's a very easy to use debugger, and it has a disk image creator as well. VCC has this advantage because you can just quickly drag and drop your bin right over it, and it executes it right away. So lots of time saved with that. It had some problems, but it's constantly being worked on now. And a lot of things have been enhanced. The team that's working on that now has just been great with the enhancements. XRoar, I used it for CoCo 2 emulation. Excellent emulator. I know there's now a CoCo 3 emulator for that, I believe. I don't have a lot of experience with XRoar, but it is one of the ones that is available. And I have links to all of those as well. Virtual disk creator is pretty important because you want to be able to save all your hard work and be able to restore it. There's quite a few available from what I understand, but I use the Windows image tool that comes with MAME and MES. It's super easy to use, has several different CoCo disk formats to choose from. And yeah, not much more to say on that. And always the real hardware is always the best. And I usually use it for major milestones. So I'll do a lot of development using the emulator to test things out. And then once things are more finalized, I'll go back into the real hardware and just make sure it works there as well. And sometimes I outsource that. So I know Ron Delvaux has a lot of different color computer 3 systems. And Ron, why can't I remember his name? Up in Minnesota there. I actually had him test. We have a lot of disk operations going on in CoCoBond games. So I knew he had a real disk drive. So I sent him that to test out because I don't have a real disk drive.
Yeah,
Ron Klein.
Ron Klein.
Ron Klein, that's his name. Thank you. Yes.
And I use both Rons for my Croaking Fist demo.
Because nothing beats the real thing. If it works on the real thing, you know it's going to work everywhere else, right? And the other thing is, always have jams, right? I'm a huge music fan. I really focus and am able to, zone in on what I'm trying to accomplish when it comes to a video game project when I can listen to instrumental guitar rock. For whatever reason, it takes my creative side of the brain and kind of controls that, while my right brain, the organization brain, takes over and focuses on the project at hand. So whatever is your thing that helps you focus and feel comfortable and motivated, do that in conjunction with your programming, because you can spend several hours. And last but certainly not least, and this is not a tool at all, but is having a good support group. I mean, you just can't do it alone. I mean, Simon, Paul, Curtis, Steve, Nick, my brother Tim, my son Sky there in a graduation cat, my wife, all have contributed to me being able to make projects by either making tools or giving me helpful advice or, allowing me the time or whatever it is. Always use the resources that you have and develop good relationships with people, because it's going to make things a lot easier and you're going to learn things a lot faster. And it's always great to have, you know, a second set of eyes on everything that you do. And that's pretty much it for me. Like I said, I'm going to try and get the slides up somewhere where everybody can get them so that you can use the links provided to help you get started. That's it for me. Next up, we got Paul Fiscarelli.
Paulie?
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right.
Can the crowd hear him? Yep. Boy, my picture's a little out of date.
How's it going, guys? All right.
Damn, it's Father Christmas.
Yeah, you like that, Simon? That's how long it's been going since last Christmas.
Definitely,
And,
definitely a lot better than last time, mate.
Yeah. My daughter won't let me shave it either. So each time I go to the barber, she's like, "You better not come back with that shaved off." So, anyways, my portion of the conversation and presentation here, huh? All right. So we're here to talk about floppy disks, right?
Oh, no.
Oh, wait, sorry. That's
a special David Ladd special later.
Yeah, recycle this from Tandy Assembly. Yeah, sorry, Dave, if you're listening, you'll have to wait till next Tandy Assembly or next CoCo Fest for the floppy talk. Actually, I don't have any slides prepared. Decided not to because a lot of what I do, for those that don't know me, I'm Paul Fiscarelli. I've been involved in the community for quite some time. Got my original color computer back in 1981. It was a CoCo 16K Model 1. Parents had got it for us for Christmas and basically just took off from there. But been involved in the community for the last several years. I'm more or less kind of a behind the scenes kind of guy. I mean, I am on Discord, I am on Facebook, and I'll occasionally post stuff, but not much. Now's the time of year, though, is when I get back into projects after the summer and all the things with the kids kind of settle down and whatnot. So getting back into projects now. But first, I wanted to say thank you to Nick and Paulie for inviting me to partake in this and join in the conversation. I really appreciate it. And you guys giving me a time slot here to talk about what I do. The only game that I've really published or put out there for the color computer is Run Dino Run. And it's a collaboration that I did with Simon. But I do a lot of things behind the scenes. And as Paulie mentioned, you know, there's various tools and whatnot that I develop. My primary focus is to take content that's available on modern systems and try to get that into the color computer. So to make your job easier to develop content for the CoCo. So I've done quite a few tools that help facilitate that. And it's been a collaborative effort with many people, namely Paulie and Simon. So thank you to both you two for the encouragement and helping me along in all these areas. So a couple things that I wanted to show you real quick, and just kind of do a live demonstration here, are some of the tools that I have worked on as of recent. Some people have seen these, other people haven't. One of the first ones that I'll bring up here is this CoCo SB app. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
So this is it's a soundboard app. I call it a CoCo soundboard. And a lot of these apps are just very crude. They look like they're somewhat polished, but behind the scenes, they're just front ends to scripts. This is one that I had worked on with Simon, and Simon did a great job pulling together a very efficient sample player that can run on both CoCo 1 and 2 or CoCo 3 at 8 kilohertz or 11 kilohertz. And this tool basically allows you to take samples from programs such as Audacity, and you can create samples, waveforms, export them as 8-bit unsigned raw files, and you can just directly import them into the soundboard app. And the soundboard app doesn't do anything other than focus on creating the content that you can use in the color computer. So as an example here, and I may need to stop sharing for a sec. Hang on one sec so I can share audio. There we go. All right, let's give this a shot. So I can just drag a file into here. You can see the waveform. And what this does is it creates FCB data statements that you can drag directly into Simon's player. You obviously need the code, and Simon has made all of this readily available, but you can bring samples in and it'll create the assembly for you or the data for you. Can you guys hear that?
It's soft, but yeah,
Yeah, it's
we
pretty
can hear it.
quiet, but we can barely, but we can hear it a little bit.
Okay. And again, there's different settings on it that allow you to change sample rate, but you have to have it imported or exported for that. So it's limited to, only a few seconds, but, sometimes you only need a few seconds per sample. And if you compress it, it does a really good job of storing nicely in the CoCo. Another tool along those lines, along the lines of sound, and use this one quite a bit actually, is this app called CoCo Notes. And again, collaborating with Simon on a 4-voice player, background IRQ player that allows you to play music in the background with roughly about 50% CPU, a little bit more than that left over for your assembly code. And one of the results of that is a collaboration that Simon and I did on Run Dino Run. So what I was looking to do was to be able to get content that was readily available. When I say readily available, that you could download off the internet and figure out how to get it into the color computer. So along with CoCo Notes, the app that I developed, there's this other tool, which is called OpenMPT. Now, this one isn't mine. This is an open source mod player or track MIDI file player or screen track or XM file player. And what you can do is you can take MIDI files that you download off the internet, bring them into this application, and what it'll do is it'll create a text-based common format of these patterns that I can copy out of the OpenMPT. So you can see the various note tables down here at the bottom. We paste this into my utility, and from here, what we can do is we can select which tracks we want to import to the CoCo. You can change things such as what waveform you want for each channel, change octaves, go up and down the scale. You can adjust tempo and length. And this is kind of counterintuitive to how the music theory works, because higher tempo is longer. It's holding those notes longer. The same thing with the length. But what I do is I just basically drag and drop into here. We hit transcribe. And then from there, we can just hit play. It's going to come off. So that's a little fast. But what we can do is we can adjust the settings on it. Sorry, looking off screen for a reference here. So we can adjust the settings on it. So we can pick square wave, do square wave. We'll do sawtooth and square wave. Hit transcribe again. So it's really that easy to be able to take content such as MIDI files, XM files, screen track files, mod files, and be able to export those into FCB statements to use alongside of the 4-voice player that Simon and I worked on. Another utility that Paulie was talking about earlier is, and I use this one quite a bit. I know Paulie uses it. This is still in development. It's definitely matured quite a bit over the last year or so. I think we maybe started working on it about a year and a half ago or so. But what's really nice about this is it allows you to take modern graphics and import them into the color computer fairly easily. As an example of it, you can take sprite sheets that you can find on the internet, drag content right into the application, and you guys might recognize that character there. So when I drag this in, it shows us the raw graphic file right here. It gives us a little bit of metadata around it. Shows us our palette, as Paulie had talked about earlier. If we wanted to do a direct export of this as FDB or FCB statements, we could do that right here, which is nice, but it's kind of slow to plot those byte by byte. So instead, what we can do is we can cut this guy up into frames. So I enable my frame splitter, and he's 4 frames by 1 high, and we hit split, and there's our sprite right there. I have some nice little tools here where I can turn on row and column numbers for reference. But I can also turn on a pixel grid so I can see them, broken up pixel by pixel. But what's also really nice is you can do it based on a byte boundary. So if you're doing things on the CoCo 3, there's what we're doing here is 4 bits per pixel. And that gives us 2 pixels per byte. So we want to see where our byte boundaries are. Over on this side here, we have the ability to do our sprite compile. And we currently can do it based on stack blasting. If we have larger sprites that we want to do as fast as possible, or we can do indexed, and we can do different types of indexing for our scanline offsets. You can choose between LEAU or ADX. They're the 2 more popular ones. And then you can also choose to erase frames, or you can do reset index. So those are, more advanced depending on how you wanted to do your output of your compiled sprite. So for this demo, I'm going to do erase frames, reset the index, and I can do a single frame. If I just want to compile that one image there, it'll show me my outputted source code for just that one frame. And this is what the compiled sprite looks like. It's converting that pixel data into load statements, offsets with ADX, and also storing those to the graphic screen. I've also got this currently coupled with VCC. It's CoCo 3 only, so not using XROR at the moment, although Kieran's done some advanced work with XROR lately, so looking forward to having that incorporated so we can use that as a test platform as well as MAME. So if I hit test, it's going to bring it up on my second monitor here, but there's our sprite, that single frame. What I can do though is I want to see what he looks like animated, so I can hit compile frames. I can get a preview of it here by hitting the play button, and he's a little fast. So we can drop that down to, let's say 8 frames per second. We'll hit stop. So we did compile frames here, and now this is giving us all our compiled frames. There's erase code in there, so it's going to erase the sprite. And that's what he looks like animated on the Color Computer 3. And that's in VCC right now. The other thing that you can do is if you wanted to do a 64-byte wide screen, this is Paulie's favorite mode, 2 lines per row. You can see what that looks like as well. So I have to recompile it because I changed the byte width. And there he is a little bit bigger in that mode. You know, if you wanted to see what he looked like going really fast, you can crank this up 60 frames per second. We don't have to recompile it because all we're doing was changing the frame rate. And there he is going nuts. So it also allows you to do things like carve up tile sets. So you guys might recognize that. We'll turn the byte boundary off. So that's the starting screen, or one of the starting screens to Mario. Some of the other sprites. So one of the things I did want to mention about this tool is, again, really focusing to bring the content into the CoCo. It's not a sprite editor. It's not a graphics editor. It doesn't do anything along those lines. It just purely focuses on creating those compiled sprites. And the reason for that is twofold. One, because there's numerous tools out there that already do it. Things like GIMP for graphics and image editing. It's open source. It's great to work with, and it works really nicely. I use it quite a bit. I know Paulie does. And then for sprite editors, there's things like Piskel, which is a bit deprecated at this point, but when we were creating it, it was still somewhat used. There's another one called Sprite, which it's been around for about 10 years. I think at one point it might have been open source, but now it's proprietary. You have to pay for it, but it's really advanced. So that's another one to take a look at. But the other reason too, it's not a Pixel sprite editor, is because I want to, again, focus on getting the content in, and there's utilities that can do it far better than I could ever do it. So as an example, what we can do is we can bring up Piskel. And I can bring in something like that. So we got this Mega Man running. And what's nice about the utility, so I can come in here, I can edit the sprite, I can see all the frames, I can do all the graphics editing, tons of useful little tools in here for doing that. But what I can do with this is I can take that Piskel image and I can drag that directly into the sprite compiler, and then I can split it up. Split. And it looks like the palette might be a little bit off, but not sure where did the matching in that. But I can do, again, so there he is running. I'll hit the compile frames. And there's our code. And then we hit our test button. And took an image from Piskel, brought it into the sprite compiler, and it's already in the color computer animated. And, you know, just to show you how that, you know, if we were to come in here with our red marker, draw all over the frames. Bring that in and split it. file frames, test. And there's our modifications to it. So, yeah, it's pretty cool that you have the ability to do that. The other thing that you can do is you can export the frames as full FTB statements. You can take in something like the Mario Brothers sprites or tiles, and you can export those as a tile set. You can export this as a bin image that you can then dzip that you can bring into your program as well. But that gives you kind of a high level overview of how that works. And then, just to show you how this all comes together, I can take, those sprites that I had just created, bring those into my assembly code. And I know some people have seen this before, but it was all done with the sprite compiler. Then we can hit run. And so all the sprites, all the tiles, all the background and everything, all done with the sprite compiler and just pulled together through the tool here. And again, so this is my floppy disk tools. I've kind of added a ad hoc editor to it. It kind of mirrors what allows you to do with Notepad++, but it allows you to bring content into the CoCo a lot quicker. As an example, if you wanted to do we're still doing syntax highlighting for, so that looks a little better. If I hit the play button here, what's nice about it is, there it is in VCC. What's nice about it is it's taking basic as well as assembled binaries as well as basic source files and bringing them into the three various emulators. And the way that I do that is I compile to a binary first, and then I load it as a binary. Here it is in XROR. And then if you want to do in VCC or MAME as well. And our MAME has to load it from a disk image. But it allows you to do it ad hoc on the fly like that. And it's real easy to develop content and go with it from there. So I know we're running short on time. I had one last thing that I wanted to show folks. Do we have time for it?
Yeah, it's only Steve next.
Okay. So with the so what does it all mean? These tools that I've worked on that I haven't really done any tremendous game development yet, but I kind of wanted to challenge myself to see what I might be able to do and how quickly I could do it. So this is something that I've been working on for the past week, seeing if I could get it ready for CoCo Fest, done entirely with all the tools that I had just shown you here. And we'll go ahead and hit launch. We'll launch it into VCC. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Yep.
Indeed.
Hopefully you can hear it. So it's loading about 0.5 MB content, and it's loading it all into memory. And there we go.
You did that in a week?
Yep.
That's impressive.
You guys saw what I had, what was it, the Wednesday or Thursday of last week, the 2 screenshots. And I told Paulie, I'm like, Paulie, you think I can get this done in a week? And I set myself the task. And with the tools, I mean, that's what made it possible. If I didn't have the tools, if you had to do that all from scratch, I don't know how long it would take.
Are you planning on fully going on and converting the entire game?
So we'll see. Obviously, doing a demo and an intro is one thing. It's heavily scripted, and going to a full action game, especially something like Prince of Persia. What inspired me to do this was I'd seen the release for the Atari 8-bit just a couple weeks ago. And I said, I wonder how this would look and sound on the color computer. So I wanted to take a few of the frames and, play around with them. And this is what I came up with. Because I think the CoCo is probably the last system that has a port of it. I think it's on every other platform out there. So it would be great to do it, but obviously quite a bit of time. And I know that Atari 8-bit team, there were several people involved in it. So it's definitely more than a one-man job. The version that you had just seen here was converted from the DOS version, which is a VGA-based game, and that game itself is about 600K. All the data and everything uncompressed, or compressed, I should say. So converting it, that high quality to the CoCo can be done. I don't know how long it would take, though, especially if it's just one person. So the tools are great, but obviously it's a lot of content that you got to create. So
Cool.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
I got to be quick, but thanks, man. That was awesome. Any question from the audience right now for our game developers?
I have one quick question myself.
We have a question on how to get the tools, Paul Fiscarelli.
Okay, so one of the things with the tools. So I just want to preface this by saying I'm not a developer. A lot of the tools that I create are very crude behind the scenes. So I had them available if you want them. They're not publicly available. So if you do want a copy, if you want to, kick the tires on it, help me work on improving them, by all means, reach out to me and I'll get you a copy. Always willing to share. I just don't want a mass distribution of it. And, people, some of the tools that I've, sent out there, like the floppy disk tools, that's something I started developing in 2007. And I've shared with a few people in the community, but it's kind of trickled around, and some of the feedback I've gotten is like, oh, this is complete garbage. It's broken. It's crashing. Why is it, so I'm a little bit reluctant to, just openly share and just publish them because, again, I'm not an application developer. I'm a hack at best. And, I just try to create these tools to, help me and other people that are interested better develop the content.
You ain't a hack. You're good. You're real good.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Well, no, I mean, my daytime job, I'm in cybersecurity and I do a lot of reverse engineering and stuff. So I'm a hack. I'm not very good when it comes to the polished product.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
I have a quick question, then I'll read a comment from the chat too. So my question is your sprite compiler, the CoCo GS or whatever it was called there, does it also do 609 compiled sprites or just 609 at this point?
Right now, it's only 6809. Definitely the opportunity to, get some of the more expanded opcode and take advantage of, things like, the large memory transfer and stuff like that. TFM, I think it is, and stuff like that. But yeah, so the limitations with it on it right now, CoCo 3 only, 4-bit per pixel, single byte resolution. It doesn't do pixel level resolution, which is kind of, a lot of people have asked about that. It strikes me as kind of odd because I haven't seen too many games on the CoCo that do single byte resolution. And if you really want to have that resolution, you can just create 2 sets of sprites. You just shift it. So
okay, and then a comment from Made in Ariana in the chat saying that was very impressive to see in the CoCo. I've always loved the animation style of Prince of Persia.
Yeah, that was my inspiration behind it too. That opening scene was just, the rotoscoping that he did on that. I'm a big fan of all his designs and stuff. And I'm like, it'd be really cool to see on the CoCo, and that's kind of what prompted me to do that.
Any other questions from the live audience or from the panel or the chat?
What graphics mode was that? Was that like the 320 by 200?
Yeah, it was. And what's really nice about that, Stevie, is it mapped perfectly from the DOSBox version. The DOS version, I did all my screen grabs from DOSBox, basically. Grabbed all the frames from there. That was one I did try to find. There are some sprite sheets on the internet, but they're from like all different platforms. They're all over the place. And, you know, I was spending more time than not finding useful content. So I decided to cut out my own sheets and do it that way.
What was that like? Mode 13 on the PC?
Yep, that's exactly what it was.
256, 320 by.
Yeah, that's the other thing. The opening scenes, you know, the splash screens and everything, they translate really nice to the CoCo 3 palette, RGB palette. The dungeon scenes, CoCo is really light on the grays and the darker colors. So you have to play with that. You know, if we're going to do a conversion of it, it's going to take a bit of work to, you know, maybe some dithering or whatnot to get those to look nice.
Yeah, you're really gonna have to fiddle about with it. But
yep, Paulie and I were spending some time with it last week when I was joking about doing this in a week, and you know, we got some decent results. I don't know. We'll talk behind the scenes, guys. Maybe this is a good one for us to try to push out there. I know it's reproducing something that already exists, but I would love to do it.
Thanks, Nick, Paul, and Paul.
Thank you, guys.
thank you for being who you are.
No problem. Thanks, guys, for listening.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
We're going to take a brief break and present the presentations. The next presentation will be the CoCoTALK panel to the nobody who wants to hear us.